The skies of Alarus 4 had once shimmered like cut sapphire. Now they bled smoke. Crystal towers, once marvels of design and science, lay shattered, their fragments gleaming dully beneath choking ash. The fields outside the capital crackled with broken energy coils, cracked armor plating, and the heavy, unspoken weight of loss. In the high command tower, Lyra Von stood rigid, her gloved hands clasped behind her back as holographic red dots advanced across the table display like a slow death. "How long?" she asked. The voice came from her left, calm, firm, yet worn thin by too many hard truths. Commander Eli Kent didn't sugarcoat. 1 day, 2 at best. Shield grids collapsing, outlying bunkers lost contact overnight. We think the Draorans have penetrated Sector Delta. Lyra exhaled slowly, not in shock, in surrender to inevitability. Alarus 4 had been a shining world, a cultural nexus, a neutral ground, a place where diplomats shook hands instead of sharpening blades, until the Draoran unity decided that peace was weakness, until the sky cracked open and dropped steel monsters onto cities, until neutrality became a target. Now, Lyra Von, the once ambassador, once scholar, was the only authority left standing in the capital, not because she was the strongest, but because everyone stronger was dead. Eli tapped a sequence. The map zoomed into the inner defense ring. "We still hold Central Bastion and the Undercity routes, and," he added with a faint edge of optimism, "the humans are holding the East Corridor." Lyra's eyes flicked toward the corner of the display, 6 blue icons moving against a wall of red. "Still alive?" Eli nodded. "And more than that, they're pushing back." She didn't smile, but a breath caught in her chest. A flicker. Humans. They had arrived 3 weeks ago, after 300 diplomatic messages went unanswered, carrying only 1 ship and less than 200 soldiers. Everyone laughed, until those soldiers started winning. The comm beside her blinked. "This is Lieutenant Delgato. East Corridor clear. Repeat, corridor clear. Requesting forward authorization. Static. Pulse fire in the background. Then, scratch that. Enemy armor still active. We're gonna dance a bit longer." Lyra turned toward the comm unit. "Put him through," she said. The image flickered. A scarred man in tactical gear appeared, helmet slung under one arm, dust smeared across his jawline. Behind him, 2 human soldiers dragged a Draoran corpse away from the blast-scarred corridor. "Lieutenant," she said, "your team's status?" Delgato gave a tired grin. "Still breathing, still ugly. Shields fried but enemies confused as hell. They weren't ready for ground fighting." Lyra studied him. There was something disarming in his tone. Humans always spoke like they weren't afraid of losing, like the fire behind them was just part of the job. "We've got wounded?" she asked. Delgato nodded. "Some. Nothing fatal. We held that corridor because one of my guys had the bright idea to collapse it on purpose, turned it into a funnel." Eli raised an eyebrow. "And that worked?" Delgato's grin widened. "Worked great. For us. Sucked for them." Lyra stepped closer to the feed. "Lieutenant, what do you need to keep holding that line?" He didn't hesitate. "Ammo, medkits, a decent night's sleep. Barring that, some more humans wouldn't hurt." Behind her, Eli murmured, "We only have 1 squad left in reserve." Lyra paused. Then, "Give them to Delgato." Hours passed. So did the sun, if it could still be called that, filtered through ash and ion fire. On the east flank, the Draorans pushed again, rolling spiked tanks designed more to terrify than to destroy. 4-legged infantry crawled across shattered pavement, emitting shrieks that cracked radio feeds. And yet, they didn't break through, because Lieutenant Delgato's unit didn't retreat. They advanced. 2 of his soldiers, Private Ung and Specialist Riley, rigged a fallen hover truck with thermal charges. When the first Draoran tank rolled forward, the explosion flipped it into its own infantry, sowing chaos in perfect arcs. Delgato moved like a ghost, sidearm drawn, rifle clipped, issuing orders with calm urgency. "Weapons hot, focus fire on center limbs, don't waste energy on plating, they bleed under the shell." Riley, "Copy that. Bleeding now." "I think that one's looking at me funny." Delgato, "Then shoot first and be polite later." He had no air support, no artillery, only grit, cleverness, and the kind of teamwork that didn't require orders, just trust. By nightfall, the eastern push had stopped, not from lack of effort, but from fear. The Draorans weren't used to losing to soldiers without aerial superiority. They weren't used to humans. In the capital, Lyra stood again before the table. This time, the red dots had stopped, the blue dots had advanced, and there was a hole, an actual hole, in the Draoran front line. Eli leaned over. "They bought us another day." Lyra didn't answer. She was watching the east, because somewhere in the fire and wreckage, something had shifted. Not just tactics, momentum. The tide had tilted, and humans, somehow, were the anchor. Back at the corridor, Delgato slumped against the blackened wall, his armor scorched but intact. Riley handed him a protein bar. He bit into it like it owed him rent. Sat nearby, staring at the horizon. "You think we'll hold?" she asked quietly. Delgato didn't speak for a second. Then, "We'll hold long enough to make 'em regret coming." Smiled. "That'll do." The stars above Alarus 4 blinked once. A brief flare, a signature. Not enemy, not Draoran. A whisper, a ping, reinforcements. And in that moment, Delgato's comm crackled. "New contact, not hostile. Transponder ID, Earth Fleet, secondary drop inbound." He stood slowly, eyes narrowing, smile creeping. "Well, looks like we just got loud enough for home to answer." The reinforcements didn't arrive like a fleet. They arrived like a punch. One moment, the skies above Alarus 4 were choked with clouds and cinders. The next, a streak of white fire tore through the atmosphere, followed by 3 more. Engines howled, light fractured, and behind the chaos came thunder, Earth Fleet drop pods, not full-scale ships, just pods, and that made the impact even louder, because the humans weren't sending a show of force, they were sending specialists. In the battered east corridor, Lieutenant Delgato barely had time to brush the dust off his shoulders before a sleek pod slammed into the courtyard like a god's fist. The metal shell hissed. Hydraulics snapped open, and from the rising mist stepped Captain Marin Hoyle, flanked by 6 others in jet-black armor, their visors lit with blue tactical bands. Delgato grinned. "Nice of you to drop in." Hoyle nodded once. "Heard you were throwing a party." Muttered. "Yeah, we even laid out the carpet, in Draoran guts." Marin's eyes flicked across the battlefield, assessing everything in seconds. "Situation?" Delgato handed her a datapad. "Draorans hit us hard this morning. We buried 2 tanks, lost a recon drone, but held the line. We've got 7 wounded, 2 critical. Shielding's dead, ammo's thinning, but morale's stupidly high." Hoyle smiled. Classic human optimism. Only kind we got. Back at the Capital Command Center, Lyra Vaughn watched the entire thing unfold on the main screen. General Eli Kent stood beside her, one eyebrow raised. "Just pods?" he asked. Lyra shook her head slowly, marveling. "Just enough." The Council liaison, a pale, silk-robed alien named Tavex Lur, had finally arrived that morning via diplomatic shuttle. He now paced the war room like a man allergic to consequences. "This is escalating," he said, voice fluttering. "Earth's presence is provocative. The Council never approved planetary defense engagements of this scope." Eli turned slowly. "The Council didn't do much when the Draorans glassed our agricultural districts either." Lyra's voice was like steel dragged across stone. "You told us to hold position and wait for negotiation." Tavex raised his hands. "And you would be wise to return to that posture. The Draoran unity can still be reasoned with." Eli chuckled. "You first." Tavex turned to Lyra. "I will be requesting immediate diplomatic withdrawal of Earth Fleet assets." Lyra met his gaze and smiled. "You can request anything you want." Then she walked past him, hands behind her back, and said calmly, "But Earth is the reason we're still alive." On the battlefield, the new arrivals moved with terrifying precision. Captain Hoyle's team laid out deployable barriers and erected energy towers in under 10 minutes. Shields shimmered to life across the perimeter. 3 snipers climbed ruined buildings and vanished into shadow. Riley watched from the wall, impressed. "Okay, that's cheating." Hoyle's voice crackled over comms. "We call it standard procedure." The Draorans struck again, harder this time, but they hadn't adjusted. They still thought they were facing desperation. They didn't realize they were now facing doctrine. A wave of skittering assault drones surged through the southern alley, sleek, silver machines with plasma claws. One leapt through the mist and was caught mid-air by a rail shot to the core. It fell in pieces. Another lunged, only to be sliced in half by a collapsing energy shield burst. Then came the tanks, big, brutal, bladed, but this time humans were ready. Ung planted seismic charges into a broken drainage canal. Riley lured 2 Draoran walkers into the trench. Delgado hit the detonator and watched the enemy collapse into their own strategy. As the dust cleared, Captain Hoyle nodded. East corridor secured. Delgado checked his rifle. So, now we push back? Hoyle turned to him. Not yet. We draw them in. We let them think this is all we have. In the capital, Eli reviewed the perimeter status. Every line was holding. Some were winning. Lyra turned to Tavex. Your council had centuries to stop this war before it started. You handed them treaties. Earth handed us fighters. Tavex hissed. You're aligning yourselves with a death world species. Earth is unstable. Eli stepped forward. Unstable? Sure, but they get results. Tavex narrowed his eyes. You'll regret making Earth your ally. Lyra shook her head. Number the Draorans will regret making Earth their enemy. That night, under black skies and the flicker of dying satellites, Delgado climbed to the rooftop of a shattered observatory and lit a cigarette. Hoyle joined him. Nice view, he gestured to the ruin. A little dusty. She looked at him. You've done good work here. Delgado blew out a stream of smoke. Thanks. You're not done yet. Nope. From the comm clipped to Hoyle's belt, a voice chimed in. Commander Hoyle, we've confirmed signal. The Draoran fleet has shifted its orbital formation. Hoyle's eyes darkened. Preparing bombardment? Possibly. Or evacuation. Too early to tell. Delgado sat forward. Evacuation. Hoyle nodded slowly. They're bleeding, and we've made them feel it. In the early hours, a new transmission pulsed through all channels. Short, cold, untranslated. But Tessa's field unit decoded it. They are not what we were told. The humans are not survivors. They are hunters. Lyra read it and closed her eyes. Eli raised an eyebrow. Something wrong? She smiled. Something's finally right. High above Alarus 4, the Draoran fleet shifted formation. At first, it looked like a retreat, but Captain Marin Hoyle knew better. From her perch atop the fortified east corridor, visor glinting beneath the low sky, she watched as one of the enemy ships broke orbit, then another, then 6 more. It wasn't retreat, it was positioning. Inside the Defiant's mobile forward command unit, the relay drone flickered. Tessa's warframe projection emerged, soft-toned but firm. Enemy fleet's geosync pattern suggests a pre-strike orbital lock. I estimate 90 minutes until surface bombardment initiation. Lieutenant Delgado exhaled through his teeth. So we've won too hard. Now they're going to torch the board. Hoyle's jaw flexed. It's not punishment. It's protocol. If they can't win ground, they burn it. Back in the capital, Lyra Von gripped the edge of the command table until her knuckles turned white. They're going to wipe the capital. Commander Eli Kent looked grim. No conventional shield can hold that kind of blast, not from orbit. Tavex Lure, pale, robe flowing and irrelevant, stood near the corner like a parasite with a schedule. I warned you this would escalate, he said. Lyra turned slowly. And I warned you Earth would fight. The council liaison didn't flinch. He tapped his data crystal. I have a proposal, he said. Eli muttered. Here it comes. Tavex spoke calmly. I have contacted the Draoran Unity. If we deliver the human strike team leader and provide coordinates for their staging bases, they are willing to spare the capital from total bombardment. Lyra blinked. Once, then said, Get out. I am offering survival. You are offering betrayal. Of soldiers who bled for us. Of a planet that trusted you. Of the last decent breath of hope we have left. Tavex straightened. Then you will burn. Lyra stepped forward, eye to eye. We already did. That's why we're fighting. In the field, Hoyle received the transmission. She didn't scream, didn't flinch. She just said, Prep the team. Delgado raised an eyebrow. What's the play? We're going up, hitting their relay. You want to board a ship that's about to bombard the planet? Yes, he blinked once. Cool, I'll grab my helmet. 20 minutes later, the stealth drop was in motion. 6 humans, 2 Veil Nomad volunteers. One goal, breach the relay tower aboard the Draoran carrier Vextar, disable the orbital weapon matrix, and buy Alarus time. The approach was chaos. Their shuttle was unarmed. It didn't matter, because the humans didn't fly straight. They danced. Hoyle spun the craft between plasma volleys, using planetary gravity to sling them beneath a dead satellite shell. 2 drones tailing them collided with debris. One clipped their wing, sheared metal and fire. They didn't slow, they rammed the hangar. Inside the Vextar, the enemy scrambled, but humans didn't come to invade. They came to surgically ruin things. Delgato's boots hit the floor first. His rifle fired twice, once through a Draoran skull, once through a control panel that slammed the blast doors shut behind them. Doors locked, he said. We're not going back. Hoyle smiled. Then we go forward. They moved like ghosts, room to room, hall to hall, Hoyle with her scanner, Delgato leading breach, Ung and Riley covering flanks. The Veil volunteers watching the corridors with eyes that flickered gold. Then they found the relay, glowing, primed, target, Alarus capital. Hoyle reached into her vest, pulled a device no one outside Earth's Black Ops division should have had. She tossed it into the matrix. The field sputtered, then died. From orbit, the fleet panicked. The relay failed. The weapon didn't fire, and suddenly, they were holding a loaded gun with no aim. Draoran bridge officers shouted. Then came the scream, "Boarders! Human! Relay compromised!" Back on the ground, Tessa confirmed the disruption. Primary bombardment matrix offline. Enemy targeting system is in cascade error. Lyra whispered. They did it. Eli grinned. Damn right they did. But in space, on the carrier, Hoyle wasn't done. She grabbed Delgato's arm. Ready for the second part? I thought this was the second part. Nope, that was the intro. She handed him a data spike, encrypted, labeled SALTCHAIN. He blinked. We're uploading Earth's virus. She nodded. We're not just disabling their guns, we're giving their command net a migraine. Salt chain was a kill loop, not lethal, but infectious. A code designed to scramble priority protocols across Draoran war servers for weeks. It didn't win battles, it dragged empires into confusion. As it uploaded, enemy fire echoed outside. Riley fell, shoulder grazed. Returned fire. Hoyle covered the breach. Delgato finished the upload. Then they ran, straight into the fire, because humans don't vanish quietly. They blew the corridor, stole a gunship, and flew out of the hangar backwards. No shields, no stealth, just nerve and luck. The Vextar tried to track them. Its cannon turned, but the targeting system stuttered, rebooted, asked the bridge to confirm, then crashed. Tessa watched from below. Draoran fleet losing orbital sync, several ships drifting, internal confusion confirmed. Lyra turned to Eli. We attack now. He grinned. I hoped you'd say that. Across the front, Earth-backed squads surged forward. Lyra broadcast a message planet-wide. They tried to bury us. Now we rise. In orbit, the Draoran fleet fragmented. 3 ships jumped. 2 spun into each other. The rest waited for a command that would never come, because the humans had done more than win. They had scrambled the rulebook, and down on Alarus 4, in the ashes and ruin. Delgato sat in the dirt, helmet off, grinning through blood. Riley handed him water. Sat beside him, breathing hard. Hoyle walked over, knelt, and said, You good? He nodded. Next time, though. Yeah? Let's send 2 ships. For the first time in weeks, the skies above Alarus 4 were quiet. Not peaceful, not healed, but quiet. And that silence, carved from fire, grit, and human stubbornness, spread farther than anyone expected. 2 days after the relay attack, the Draoran fleet had fractured. 3 carriers vanished without formal withdrawal, cowards' jumps. 2 more refused to fire again, even when given new targets. The last fleet commander went dark. Literally. Reports said her vessel's command systems locked her out after Salt Chain took root. Earth fleet analysts back home had a term for it. Mission KO via Protocol Napalm. In the capital, Lyra Von stood before the hastily rebuilt podium in Council Hall. Sunlight, real sunlight, filtered through the half-shattered glass dome, and before her stood every remaining civilian leader from every district that hadn't been flattened. Behind her, Eli Kent kept one hand on his sidearm, not for safety, just to remind everyone where they'd come from. She spoke without notes, without the usual diplomatic robes, just the same armor she'd worn when the enemy reached the gates. Alarus 4 still burns, she said, but today it burns as a world that refused to kneel. Murmurs rippled through the room, some applause, some grim nods, but above it all, a new signal interrupted, from space, from the Veil network. It was a broadcast, unauthorized, unapproved, and unstoppable. Footage of humans fighting alongside Alarus troops, of Delgato's team ramming the carrier's hangar, of Council Liaison Tavex Lure secretly transmitting human base coordinates to Draoran contacts. The tribunal room exploded in outrage. Lyra turned to Tavex, who stood pale, sweat glistening along his temples. "I demand diplomatic protection," he shouted. "I represent the Interworld Council." Eli stepped forward slowly. "And what did they offer us, Tavex?" When the fire came. Silence. No answer. Just the sound of security cuffs locking around his wrists. Outside, the city rebuilt in fragments. Children planted flowers where bunkers once stood. Vendors reopened beneath tarps sewn from old banners. But more than that, transmissions started flowing in. From Karnak, a Draoran-held mining moon. "Our governor surrendered the moment the news hit. They were never brave. We request dialogue." From Ceres Prime, a human-aligned diplomatic post. Earth was asked to send a fleet. Instead, they sent proof. "We stand with Alarus." From the Veil. Earth remembered what it was to be feared and followed. "We do not forget allies." In the East Corridor, Delgato limped through the rubble with a field tablet. Caught up to him. "You hear?" "Hear what?" "You and Hoyle made galactic broadcast. Some station called you the Sledgehammer and the Flame." Delgato snorted. "Which one am I?" "Pretty sure you're the Hammer." Riley approached, tossing him a data chip. "New orders." He caught it mid-air. "Let me guess. Go home, sleep, drink?" She shook her head. "Peace envoy." "Say again?" Riley grinned. "Earth sending a representative to speak at the first Free World Summit. You're going." He blinked. "Me?" "Apparently you're iconic." Delgato looked around at the burned-out walls, broken antennae, and makeshift flags. "I was just doing my job." Nudged him. "That's why it worked." At the summit, hosted not on Alarus, not on Earth, but aboard a neutral orbital station built from salvaged Draoran wreckage, Lyra stood at the front with Delgato and Hoyle beside her. Dozens of species filled the assembly, some skeptical, some scared, but none could deny the truth anymore. Earth changed everything. Lyra's final words echoed through the chamber. "We didn't want to lead, but when the fire came, Earth stood with us, and we're still standing." Hoyle whispered to Delgato, "Still think we were the backup?" Delgato shook his head. "Nope." Because across the galaxy, something shifted. A word used to describe humans had reappeared in ancient lexicons. A word not spoken since Earth was written off as a death world. Defiant. And at the far edge of space, in a region known only to Council archives, an encrypted relay pulsed. Not a warning, a request. "Earth presence confirmed. Reassess galactic hierarchy." The message bounced once, then disappeared. Because Earth didn't just survive Alarus 4, they made the galaxy listen. The summit chamber aboard Station Helix felt like standing inside history as it rewrote itself in real time. 79 delegates, 34 planetary banners. And in the center, under a silver dome made from the melted hull of a Draoran war cruiser, stood a flag few had expected to see on equal footing. Earth's. Captain Marin Hoyle stood beside Lyra Von with arms folded, armor polished, expression unreadable. Lieutenant Delgato stood just behind her, still in field gear. Not out of neglect, but because he'd refused every ceremonial uniform Earth Fleet tried to ship him. "Send me in what I bled in," he'd told them. They did. Lyra stepped forward first. There was no preamble, no sweeping overture. Just her voice, firm, raw, earned. Alarus 4 was not the first world to burn, and it won't be the last. But it might be the first world that burned and still stood after the fire. Delegates leaned in. Some took notes, Others watched the humans. Lyra continued. You all saw the battle. You heard the broadcasts. You watched Earth arrive late to the table and flip the table over. Soft laughter, even from the veil. We did not invite Earth because they were the strongest. We begged for help because they were the only ones still listening. She turned to Delgato. Some of them didn't even know what planet we were on. A beat of chuckles again. Delgato shrugged. I thought I was being sent to Alarus. With an O. Lyra let the laughter linger, then stepped back. Today, we do more than end a war. We begin an alliance of worlds not yet silenced. No one joins by vote. They join by standing up. She looked at the human captain and soldier beside her. And Earth stood. Now it was Delgato's turn. He stepped up slowly, not used to microphones or polished metal floors or watching 80 alien species track his every move. He cleared his throat once, then spoke the only way he knew how, honestly. I'm not a diplomat, he said. Not trained for this. He gestured vaguely to the room. This is all above my pay grade. A few scattered laughs. I came to Alarus to protect a shield grid. That's it. I didn't know what the hell a Draoran was. I didn't know what a Veil Nomad was. I didn't even know where to get a decent meal that didn't taste like carbon. But I knew one thing. I knew when someone needed help, and I knew I wasn't leaving until they got it. He paused, letting the weight land. We don't fight to look tough. We fight because not fighting is worse. We don't stick around because we're noble. We stay because we're stubborn and tired of seeing people get stepped on. He looked around the room, then down at his own scarred armor. I don't care if this alliance wears Earth's colors. I care if it acts like Earth did. Silence. Then a slow wave of applause. It spread. Across species. Across centuries of mistrust. Earth hadn't arrived to conquer. They had arrived to remind the galaxy what standing up looked like. Later that day, back aboard the Defiant, Hoyle and Delgato stood in the war room that no longer needed that name. Tessa's voice crackled in gently. New signals received. Karnak has declared independence. 2 council trade routes voluntarily rerouted under the Alliance Charter. Hoyle exhaled. And the council? Officially, observing. Unofficially, scrambling. She smiled. Delgato leaned back in his chair. So, peace? Hoyle nodded. Peace. For now. He looked toward the viewport, where Alarus 4 spun slowly in the distance, bruised, scarred, but alive. I thought I was sent to die there, he murmured. Hoyle didn't respond right away. Then, no. You were sent, so someone else didn't. On the surface, Lyra Von stood beside the new memorial in East Corridor. Carved in glass, steel, and alloy, its inscription was simple. For those who didn't ask where, only when. Beneath it, no names. Just a single phrase etched in every major galactic dialect. You're not alone anymore. And out beyond the systems, past trade lanes and old borders, one last Draoran cruiser, silent and alone, caught the full transmission of Earth's speech. Its captain sat in the dark and whispered, They didn't come to win. They came to change everything.